Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. MLB Thursday. We got 9 games on the board. I'm going to go through 6 of them in this video. There's a couple where we don't know who's pitching yet, but we'll go through the entire slate tomorrow on the live show. That's at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, so unique starting time. We're going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the Thursday show. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. As far as Wednesday night, I had a winning day on the site. I think I went 3-2. I placed an extra bet in the Discord, which lost. So my personal bets went 3-3, but I had a winning day on the website, so that's good. 3 green days in a row on the website. I'll take it. Hopefully that continues. So yeah, Thursday MLB. Let's roll.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
First game on the board is Twins D-backs in Arizona, but I'm actually going to skip this one. I don't think we 100% know who's going to be pitching for Minnesota. It says David Festa on RotoWire, who I believe is one of their top pitching prospects, but I don't know if that's confirmed yet because there's no lines open from what I can see. At the time I'm recording this, there's no lines open yet. So we'll talk about it on the live show, 1 p.m. Eastern time, but as of right now, this is a pass for me. Next up, Cubs, Giants in San Francisco. This one close to a pick'em. Looks like the Cubs are very short road favorites here. Giants are like around -108. Total sitting at 7.5. We got Imanaga on the mound for the Cubs. Jordan Hicks pitching for the Giants. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a slight lean on the Giants through the first 5, 2.89 to 2.52, and a pretty solid lean on the Giants' final score. 5.32 to 4.13. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. These two teams pretty much dead even on the season. Cubs -7.4% ROI, Giants -7.6%. But if you look at the home away, Giants have actually been profitable at home. They have a +2% ROI this year, and the Cubs on the road, good Lord, -20.1%. So the Giants have actually turned a profit if you've been betting them at home. Let's take a look at the matchup, and we'll start with the Cubs bats, and we know the Cubs offense is definitely nothing to fear here. 19th in WRC+, 20th in OPS, 19th in WOBA in the last 30 days. In the last 14 days, even worse than that. Their numbers on the road, I mean, this has been a bottom 10 lineup on the road all season. In the last 30 days, the last 14 days, even closer to a bottom 5 lineup. Cubs against righties, again, not good. In the last 30 days, 19th, 20th, and 20th. Pretty terrible in the last 14 days. Now, in the last 7 days, the numbers actually look pretty good. But if you look at the game logs, they pretty much all came in one game against Tyler McGill, Meatball McGill. They crushed Meatball McGill. They had 8 base runners and 6 earned runs in just 3 innings of work. But look at all the other righty starters they've seen here. Severino, 6 shutout innings. Logan Webb, 7 innings, 2 earned runs. Jordan Hicks, 5 shutout innings, who they're about to see in this one. Although we do need to point out that the Cubs did have 8 base runners in that game against Jordan Hicks. So he threw 5 shutout innings, but by no means did he blank the Cubs. They actually gave him some problems. Before that, Michaelis, 6 1/3, 1 run. Before that, Payante, only 1 run. Kyle Gibson, 7 shutout. So yeah, they got to Tyler McGill once on June 22nd, but as a whole, the Cubs are definitely not getting to righty starters. And to top it off, Jordan Hicks has great history against the Cubs. Since 2022, he's pitched against the Cubs 8 times. Now, obviously, a lot of those are going to be out of the bullpen when he was pitching out of the bullpen. But against the Cubs, he's got a 1.98 ERA, and 1.10 WHIP, over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, a 3.48 expected FIP. So Jordan Hicks has been excellent in his previous appearances against the Cubs. That being said, Jordan Hicks is not playing his best baseball right now. In his last 5 starts, he's got a 5.56 ERA and a 1.76 WHIP. He's really been struggling. His last 2 starts at home is 6.30 ERA, so he's not even pitching that well at home anymore, which was early in the season, he was great at home in San Francisco. That hasn't been the case lately. Here are his game logs. Got crushed on the road in St. Louis. Before that is the Cubs game, and it was 5 shutout innings, like we said, but again, 8 base runners. So the Cubs were giving him problems. Houston, 3 earned runs in less than 5 innings of work. Cardinals crushed them. Yankees, you got to go all the way back to May 25th, so over a full month ago to find the last time Jordan Hicks pitched a good game. Honestly, it was on the road against the Mets. If you take a look at Jordan Hicks' pitch mix, his main pitch is the sinker, which is actually good news for the Cubs. Cubs are actually 13th in baseball against that pitch in the last 30 days. So I know the Cubs have some terrible offensive numbers. They're tough to trust on the road, but Jordan Hicks has been really struggling, and the Cubs just saw him, and they hit the sinker well. I think the Cubs are going to score some runs. On the other side, we got the Giants bats, and Giants have been okay. In the last 30 days, 16th, 18th, and 18th. In the last 14 days, slightly better than that, but in the last 7 days, slightly worse than that. As far as their numbers at home, pretty average in the last 30 days, 16th, 18th, and 20th. But then we get to their numbers against lefties, and this is where you start to find some value on the Giants lineup. In the last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup in baseball against left-handed pitching. Now, you look at the last 4 lefty starters, though. 2.96 ERA and a 1.36 whip. But that's really just the back-to-back starts against Justin Steele. Justin Steele pitched really well against the Giants twice in a row, and it's kind of skewing the numbers here. Because you look before that, Sandoval, they got to him, 10 base runners in 5 innings. They got to Tyler Anderson. I know they only scored 1 run, but they had 10 base runners in that one as well. They crushed Framber Valdez. So basically what I'm saying is those 2 back-to-back games against Justin Steele, they're skewing the numbers for the Giants against lefties because they've really produced against left-handed pitching. Which brings us to Shota Imanaga. Now, his numbers on the year look great. 2.96 ERA and a 1.10 whip. If you look at his numbers from his last 4 starts, he does have an even 6 ERA, so that indicates that he's been struggling as of late. Last 2 road starts, 7.36 ERA. So again, indicative of him struggling as of late. But when you look at the game logs, it's really just 1 start. Well, actually 2 starts here. The Mets absolutely destroyed this guy. 11 hits and 10 earned runs in just 3 innings of work. But before that, he pitched a great game against the Cardinals, and before that he pitched well against the Reds. The White Sox did give him some problems, 7 hits and 4 1/3 innings pitched, but overall it wasn't terrible. Then before that he struggled in Milwaukee. So there's really only 2 bad starts on this entire sheet here. All 7 of these game logs. It's 2 bad starts that are skewing the numbers. Imanaga maybe not quite as dominant as he was earlier in the season, but he's fine. It was a couple bad starts. And also his main pitch is the 4-seam fastball. The Giants have not been hitting fastballs. 22nd against that pitch in the last 30 days. They do hit the splitter, though, which is Imanaga's other main pitch. He throws a 4-seam fastball in the splitter. So overall, I kind of like the edge for the Cubs in the first 5. I think they're going to get to Jordan Hicks. I really don't have a ton of faith in Jordan Hicks. And even though the Giants do have nice-looking numbers against lefties, I think Imanaga can pitch well. But when we get to the bullpen matchup, this is where definitely swings towards the Giants. Now, if you look at the overall bullpen numbers in the last 30 days, it's pretty close to even, a slight edge towards the Giants. But look at the expected FIP, indicating the Giants bullpen has definitely had some bad luck, and they've performed much better than this. And then look at the home away numbers. The Cubs bullpen on the road, oh my God. On the season, this is one of the worst bullpens in baseball on the road. Same in the last 30 days, the last 14 days. Meanwhile, the Giants bullpen has been much better at home. So definite bullpen edge for the Giants. And then offensively against bullpens, again, edge goes to the Giants. So in the late innings, no question, San Francisco has the edge. But when we look at the bullpen usage, Giants might be in rough shape here. Duvall and Tyler Rogers both pitched back-to-back nights. Now, they didn't throw a ton of pitches, so maybe there's a chance that the Giants use them 3 straight days. But keep in mind, Giants immediately fly home to start a series against the Dodgers, their division rivals, with no days off. I don't think they want to start that series with their main bullpen arms having pitched 3 consecutive days. So I don't imagine we're going to see Duvall or Tyler Rogers in this game, which is why I bet the Cubs. I think Imanaga could pitch well. I think the Cubs are going to get to Jordan Hicks. I don't have a ton of faith in Jordan Hicks right now. Yes, the Cubs also start an important series tomorrow. It's not like the Giants are the only team that started an important division series. The Cubs immediately go to Milwaukee for a big series, but it's a shorter trip and their bullpen's better rested. Taking the Cubs. I already bet this. I got the money line at -108. Next up, we got the Braves on the road in Chicago to play the White Sox. White Sox are plus 235 dogs at home here, and the total sitting at 8. Chris Sale is on the mound for the Braves. Drew Thorpe pitching for the White Sox. Take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a huge lead on the Braves here. 3.63 to 1.51 after 5 innings. Final score 5.84 to 3.07 Atlanta. Before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Now, obviously, the Braves have been a more profitable team to bet than the White Sox have, but still, the Braves have a negative 5% ROI. So the Braves have cost you money this year if you've been betting them, and they've been even worse than that on the road. Now, the good news for the Braves is the White Sox at home have basically been an auto fade, minus 25.9% ROI. But the Braves have not been a moneymaker this season. And let's get into the matchup. We'll start with the Braves bats. Last 30 days, bottom 10 lineup in baseball. Last 14 days, last 7 days, much better than that. Getting back closer to where we expect the Braves lineup to be. But against right-handed pitching, man, this is so ugly. In the last 30 days, the Braves lineup against righties, 26 in WRC+, 22nd in OPS, 24th in WOBA. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. When is this going to end? When are the Braves going to start hitting righties again? Also, look at their numbers on the road. In the last 30 days, the Atlanta Braves are a bottom 5 lineup in baseball. on the road. So they haven't hit righties, and they haven't been hitting on the road. You can see here, the last 2 righty starters that pitch against the Braves, 2.70 ERA and an 0.67 whip. So they did not get to the last couple righty starters they've seen. And push it back even farther than that, the last 6 righty starters against the Braves, 3.74 ERA and a 1.04 whip. So again, just not getting to righty starters. And here are the game logs. Lance Lynn, 6 2/3 innings pitched, just 1 earned run, 4 hits. Lance Lynn blanked him. Before that, Marcus Stroman, great game. They didn't even really get to Casey Mize, who's having a terrible season. Didn't even really get to Casey Mize. Before that, Reese Olson, 6 shutout innings. So this Braves lineup just continues to struggle to get to righty starters, which brings in Drew Thorpe. Now, his main pitch is the 4-seam fastball, and the Braves have been hitting fastballs. They're actually 9th in baseball against the 4-seam fastball in the last 30 days. But his other main pitch is the changeup, and the Braves haven't been hitting the changeup. He also throws the slider a lot, and they haven't been hitting the slider. Now, Drew Thorpe's numbers on the season don't look great. He's only made 3 starts. He's 1-1 with a 5.02 ERA and a 1.53 whip, 5.91 expected FIP. So these obviously are not great looking numbers. I will say that all 3 of his starts have been on the road. It's actually going to be his first start of the season this year. And when you pull up his righty-lefty splits, they are significant. I mean, this guy struggles against lefty bats. 4.13 WOBA, 2.50 whip, and an 8.07 expected FIP against lefty bats. Now, it's only 3 starts. That's probably why the splits are so extreme, because we're talking about a small sample size here. But look at his numbers against righty bats. Actually really nice looking. 2.24 WOBA and an 0.84 whip. So he's actually been really good against righty bats. Lefties, not so much. Braves are only projected to have 4 lefties in the lineup, but 3 of them are in the first 4 hitters. So 3 of them are going to bat in the first inning. These kind of markets aren't open yet. I'm recording this pretty early on. Braves to score a run in the first inning, maybe. First inning minus a half run. 3 out of the first 4 batters in the Braves lineup are lefties. I expect the Braves to score a run in the first inning here. But as a whole, Braves aren't hitting righties. They're not hitting on the road. They're going to have 5 righties in the lineup. I don't think it's crazy to say Drew Thorpe could pitch himself a decent game here. On the other side, we got Chris Sale, and he's been, I'm sure you know, he's been awesome this year. 2.91 ERA, 0.93 whip on the season. Numbers in the last 10 starts, the last 3 starts look about the same. He hasn't slowed down at all. He's been a savage on the road. On the season, he's made 6 road starts. He's been excellent. Last 4 road starts, last 2 road starts. Doesn't matter. He's been great on the road. He's been great, period. Here are his game logs. In Yankee Stadium, gem. Shut down the Rays, the Nats. Oakland crushed him, which is just crazy. But if you look at the rest of his starts, that's clearly an outlier. He shut down every other lineup you've seen except a home start against Oakland. So clearly that's just an outlier. Chris Sale's been excellent this year. And his main pitches are the slider, the 4-seam fastball, the changeup. White Sox bats against those pitches. They're actually the worst lineup in baseball against the slider. And Chris Sale throws it over 40% of the time. Just not a great look for the White Sox here. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the White Sox offensive numbers. Bottom 10 lineup in the last 30 days. In the last 14 days, even worse than that. Against left-handed pitching, I guess this is where you can find something if you're looking for the White Sox. In the last 30 days, they're actually 18th, 15th, and 16th. They're not nearly as bad against lefties as they are against righties, but still not looking great. And it's trending in the wrong direction if you look at the last 14 days, the last 7 days. This game's at home, which is terrible news for the White Sox because this team just never scores at home. On the season, this is by far the worst home lineup in baseball, 30th across the board. If you take a look at the game logs, lefty starters against the White Sox, you can see they couldn't get to James Paxton, didn't get to Framber Valdez, didn't get to Jordan Montgomery. They did get to Tommy Henry back on June 15th, and if you rewind before that, you can find some instances where they were able to make some noise against lefty starters, but we're talking 3 lefty starters in a row that the White Sox did not touch. I know the White Sox have a lineup full of righty bats, and you got a lefty making a road start. You would think that's a solid spot to take a shot with a dog, but I have no reason to doubt Chris Sale here. I'm sure he'll be fine. As far as the bullpen matchup, edge definitely goes to Atlanta, but let's give the White Sox some credit. Their bullpen has been much better recently. In the last 14 days, they're actually on the verge of being a top 10 bullpen. We know that's going to fade, but 10th in ERA. Let's give them some credit. They've been terrible pretty much all season. But offensively against bullpens, edge has to go to the Braves, but not by much. The Braves haven't been good in the late innings, but good Lord, they've been better than the White Sox. White Sox in the last 14 days have been the worst lineup in baseball in the late innings. As far as betting this game, man, I got nothing. I guess I would lean White Sox at this crazy price, but there's no way I actually bet this. I wasn't joking about that Braves first inning angle. Thorpe has terrible numbers against lefties, and the Braves have 3 of their first 4 hitters are good lefties. So the chances that the Braves score a run in the first inning are probably high. So maybe a Murphy or a Braves first inning minus a half run or something. But I mean, I personally don't like bets like that, but for those of you who do, maybe something like that. But for me, this is probably just a pass. Next up, we got Marlins on the road in Philly here. Phillies are huge favorites, minus 290. Total sitting at 7.5. We got Trevor Rogers pitching for the Fish, Zach Wheeler pitching for the Phillies. Take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we have a very comfortable lean on the Phillies, 3.32 to 1.66 after 5 innings. Final score 2.77 to 5.6 Philly. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Phillies have been much more profitable than the Marlins, plus 8.6% to minus 22.8%. Last 10 games, the Phillies have actually cost us some money, minus 8.7% in the last 10. This game's at home in Philly, where the Phillies have been a great bet all season. They have a plus 15.6% ROI at home. As you would probably guess, the Marlins on the road have not been profitable at all. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the Marlins bats, and it's as dreadful as you imagined. In the last 30 days, this is the worst lineup in baseball. 30th in WRC+, 30th in OPS, 30th in WOBA. On the road, on the season, worst lineup in baseball. 30th, 30th, 30th. Last 30 days, same thing. 30th across the board. So this is the worst lineup, period. Worst lineup on the road. And against right-handed pitching, almost the worst. In the last 30 days, 29th, 28th, and 28th. Some really ugly-looking numbers here from the Marlins bats. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Marlins combined for a 2.88 ERA and an 0.84 WHIP. So they're not getting to righty starters. Here are the game logs, and they actually did get to Bryce Miller. But other than that, I mean, Seth Lugo, 6 shutout. Logan Gilbert, 8 shutout. George Kirby threw an absolute gem. They did get to Lance Lynn. But before that, they couldn't touch Sonny Gray. Didn't really get to Severino. So, yeah, I mean, Marlins aren't hitting on the road. They're not hitting righty starters. Pretty safe to say it's a fortunate spot for Zach Wheeler at home, where he's been dominant. Now, speaking of Zach Wheeler, we do have to mention that he has struggled against this team. Since 2021, he's pitched against the Marlins 8 times. He's got a 4.91 ERA and a 1.39 WHIP. So this Marlins team has given Wheeler problems in the past. Now, if you look at Wheeler's last 3 starts, you can see he's got a 4.91 ERA. So you might think, hey, he's been struggling lately. No, that's not the case. I mean, look at the game logs here. It's one game. He got crushed on the road in Baltimore, and it's skewing the numbers. Every other start on this list is excellent. I mean, he blanked the D-backs, 7 innings, 1 earned run, just 2 hits, and the Diamondbacks have been hitting righties too. That was a hot lineup. He shut them down. On the road in Fenway, 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 run. Brewers, 7 innings, 1 run. I mean, Wheeler's been absolutely dominant, and he's been especially dominant at home. On the season, at home in Citizens Bank, he's got a 1.66 ERA and an 0.82 WHIP. Look at his last 4 home starts, last 2 home starts. Hasn't slowed down at all. I will say Zach Wheeler's splits between top 10 lineups and bottom 10 lineups could be a concern at some point. Against top 10 lineups versus righties, he's actually got a 5.89 ERA, 1.42 WHIP. A lot of that probably skewed by that crazy Baltimore game. But the point is, look at the innings pitched here. 40 in the third, innings pitched to 18 in the third. So Zach Wheeler, as great of a season as he's having, and he's been arguably the best pitcher in baseball this year, he's pitched against a lot of bad lineups. It's something to keep in mind. And weirdly, this Marlins lineup, now this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, this is a little thin. The Marlins lineup has been weirdly good against good righty starters. Against righty starters with an ERA above 5, they're basically the worst lineup in baseball. But against righty starters with an ERA below 3.50, they're actually some decent-looking numbers. So the Marlins have been weirdly good against good righty starters like Zach Wheeler is. Is that enough to make me trust the Marlins lineup on the road in Philly? Of course not. All signs point to Zach Wheeler throwing a gem here like he basically does every single time at home. So it's a very favorable spot for Zach Wheeler. On the other side, we got the Phillies bats, and they've been great. Last 30 days, top 10 lineup across the board. Same with the last 14 days, the last 7 days. Their numbers at home, elite. On the season, this is a top 5 lineup at home. Same goes for the last 30 days, the last 14 days. Their numbers against lefties, not quite as good as their numbers against righties, but I mean, this is still a borderline top 10 lineup against lefties. In the last 30 days, 7th, 8th, and 8th. And I mean, last 14 days and the last 7 days aren't much worse than that. Philly's definitely a better lineup against righties, but they're not bad against lefties at all. Now, if you look at this graphic here, you could see the last 3 lefty starters to pitch against the Phillies, 4.32 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP. But if you pull up the game logs, that's really just one start that's skewing the numbers there. It was Skubal. Skubal blanked them. 7 shutout innings, just 3 hits. Before that, they got to Tommy Henry. They actually didn't get to Jordan Montgomery either. I should know. I had the Snakes in that game. That was awesome. But, I mean, look at the rest of the names on this list. They got to Quintana. They got to Minaya. So they've gotten to some lefty starters, but there are a few names on this list that the Phillies weren't able to get to, which brings us to Trevor Rogers. And bad news for Trevor Rogers, he has terrible career history against the Phillies. He's pitched against them 10 times. He's got a 6.99 ERA and a 1.68 whip. So he's really struggled with this team. Now, Trevor Rogers is actually coming off back-to-back good starts. He's got a 2.70 ERA and an 0.83 whip in his last 2 starts. Expected FIP numbers indicate he's had some good luck this year, but still solid-looking numbers. And when you look at his road starts, last 2 road starts, 2.19 ERA, 1.14 whip. So Trevor Rogers hasn't really been bad at all recently. Here are his game logs. Yeah, we can question the quality of opponents here. Seattle can't hit lefties, but he pitched a gem against them. Went on the road in Washington, 7 innings, 2 earned runs. Great start. Before that, pitched a great game against Cleveland. Cleveland is a lineup I fear against righties, not so much against lefties, but still, great start. Texas guy. I mean, look at these game logs. This isn't bad. Trevor Rogers isn't pitching bad. Look at the expected FIP column on the right. Does indicate he's had some good luck, but still, by no means is Trevor Rogers pitching poorly right now. He's been pretty good. And check this graphic out. This is a little thin, kind of tongue-in-cheek again, but Phillies have actually been much better against good lefty starters. Against lefty starters with an ERA below 3.50, they're arguably the best lineup in baseball. But against lefty starters with an ERA above 5, they're actually not very good. Now, I don't know if there's anything to take away from that, but I thought it was interesting enough to share in the video. If we look at his pitch mix, 4-seam fastball, sinker, changeup, slider, he uses all 4 of those pitches. Phillies are 11th, 8th, 21st, and 18th, so not overly elite here. Not saying there's no path to Trevor Rogers pitching a good game, but don't love his career history against this team. I think he'll be okay. Let's chalk him up for 5 innings, 3 runs. Phillies will get to him, but he'll be able to put something close to a quality start together. As far as the bullpen matchup, no question you have to give the edge to the Phillies, but I do have to mention the Marlins bullpen has been very good recently. On the last 30 days, they're 9th in ERA, 6th in WOBA. Thing is, the Phillies have just been better than that, but Marlins bullpen has been good. Offensively against bullpens, though, no question, huge edge to Philadelphia. Phillies have been a top 10, top 5 lineup in the late innings, and the Marlins have been bottom 5. I mean, basically the opposite of that. As far as betting this game, obviously, I'd love to take a shot with the Marlins. Zach Wheeler weirdly always struggles against this team, but I can't do it. Phillies should win comfortably. I guess if you put a gun to my head and force me to place a bet on this game, I'd say under 7.5. But no, this is going to be a pass. Next up, we got Texas on the road in Baltimore, but this is another one that has no lines up as I'm recording this. I think the starting pitching matchup is going to be John Gray versus Corbin Burns, but again, there's no lines, which means we don't really know who's pitching yet. So I'm going to skip it for now. We will talk about it on the live show, but this is a pass for now. Next up, Yankees on the road in Toronto. Blue Jays are dogs at home plus 118, total sitting at 8.5. We got Carlos Rodon on the mound for the Yanks, Jose Berrios pitching for the Blue Jays. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a slight lean on the Yankees after 5 innings, 3.01 to 2.68, and a slight lean on the Yankees' final score as well, 5.12 to 4.59. So model likes the Yankees here on the road. Before we get into this matchup, let's take a look at some ROI numbers. Yankees have been much more profitable than the Blue Jays this season, plus 9.3% to minus 13.6. Last 10 games, Yankees have definitely not been profitable, though. We know the Yankees are going through a little bit of a slump right now. On the road, though, the Yankees have been a great team to bet this year, plus 15.1%. Toronto has not been profitable at home, as you probably would have guessed anyway. All right, so let's look at Jose Berrios' numbers, and man, his last 4 starts. This graphic says last 3 starts, but really his last 4 starts have been a little rough. 6.48 ERA, 1.26 whip isn't bad, but 6.48 ERA is rough looking. Last 2 starts at home, 4.50 ERA, 5.45 expected FIP. But when we pull up the game logs, this is where it starts to make sense. Cleveland, Milwaukee, in Milwaukee, where they're much better, and Baltimore. I mean, damn, that is a tough stretch for a righty starter. Cleveland, back-to-back starts, Milwaukee in Milwaukee, and the O's. So I think we need to disregard Jose Berrios' recent stats, at least to an extent. This is a gauntlet right here. There's a lot of good righty starters that would have terrible numbers if they had these 4 starts in a row. So maybe a buy low spot on Jose Berrios. But the thing is, it's not like it gets easier for him. He's pitching against the Yankees. Now, to be fair, the Yankees have cooled a bit. In the last 30 days, 10th in WRC+, 11th in OPS, 10th in WOBA. But the last 14 days, the last 7 days, not looking like that at all. Against right-handed pitching, again, same thing. Last 30 days, 10th across the board, but last 14 days against righties, 20th, 22nd, and 20th. So Yankees bats definitely cooling a bit. Still solid-looking numbers on the road, though. On the season, this is a top 5 lineup on the road. Last 30 days, top 10. Last 14 days, 12th across the board. They are still getting to righty starters. 6.37 ERA, the last 5 righty starters combined against the Yankees. And here are the game logs. I mean, they got to Charlie Morton, they got to Albert Suarez, didn't really get to Cutter Crawford, didn't really get to Cooper Criswell either, but they got to Brian Bayo. Now, you might look at these game logs and think, Kyle, how are the Yankees bats cooling? They're getting to every single starter on this list. Well, these are just righty starters. They've seen a weird amount of lefty starters recently, and they've been struggling against them. But you can see here, righty starters, a couple of them were able to pitch good games against the Yankees, but for the most part, they're still getting to righty starters. Now, something that worries me here for Jose Barrios is his main pitch is the sinker. 33.9% of his pitches are sinkers. Yankees are the best lineup in baseball at hitting the sinker. So that's pretty dangerous. But he also throws the shit out of the curveball. 31.1% of his pitches are curveballs, and the Yankees have been one of the worst lineups in baseball hitting the curveball. So some good and some bad there for Barrios. But now we get to his history against the Yankees, and this is where it takes a turn south for Jose Barrios. He really struggles against this team. His last 4 starts against the Yankees, this is since 2022. He's 0-4 with a 6.08 ERA, 139 whip. His last 3 home starts against the Yankees, 0-3 with an even 6 ERA, 144 whip. So Jose Barrios always seems to have problems with the Yankees. It's kind of a tough spot to make a prediction because you look at Jose Barrios' game logs and you're like, damn, this dude's been through the gauntlet. It's definitely a buy low spot for him, but he's pitching against the Yankees and he's got terrible history against the Yankees. So I do want to buy in on Jose Barrios. Maybe if the Yankees get to him, we bet him heavy in the next start, but I don't want this to be the spot that I put my money on Jose Barrios. He always seems to struggle against the Yankees, so I think we can count on the Yanks getting some runs on him. On the other side, we got Carlos Rodon. Last 2 starts, 12.46 ERA and a 2.65 whip. Holy shit. Last 3 road starts, 4.50 ERA, 1.06 whip. If you take a look at the game logs, you could see last 2 starts, man. The Braves crushed this guy in Yankee Stadium. 11 hits, 7 earned runs. And before that, the Red Sox crushed him in Fenway. 10 base runners or 5 earned runs in 5 innings of work. So Carlos Rodon, who was having an excellent season, back-to-back terrible starts. I have good news for Mr. Rodon, though. He's pitching against Toronto, and the Blue Jays, as we know, last 30 days, bottom 10 lineup. Now, things do seem to be trending upwards a bit. In the last 7 days, we're talking about 13th, 15th, and 13th, but still, it's the Blue Jays. I don't trust that offense at all. Look at their numbers at home. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5, bottom 6 home lineup on the season. This is a bottom 10 home lineup. And look at their numbers against lefties. And this is crazy because you rewind a month ago, the Blue Jays were hitting left-handed pitching. It makes sense. They have a lineup full of righty bats. Makes sense. The last 30 days, this is the worst lineup in baseball against lefties. It's crazy. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. The last 3 lefty starters to pitch against the Blue Jays, 3.86 ERA. The last 7 lefty starters to pitch against the Blue Jays, 2.95 ERA. So they're not getting the lefty starters. And here are the game logs. They really got to just one. Cade Povich. They got 6 earned runs off him, 9 base runners. They crushed Cade Povich on June 6th. Other than that, didn't get to any of these guys. Logan Allen, Bailey Falter, Garrett Crochet, they get a pass because he's been excellent. Tyler Alexander, these are the guys that were blanking the Blue Jays. Now, something to keep in mind, though, look at the dates. It's June 27th. This game's being played. They've only seen 1, 2, 3 lefties in the last month. June 14th, June 6th. So they have not seen a ton of left-handed pitching. So all these numbers, Blue Jays against lefties, keep in mind, we're talking about a small sample size. They haven't seen many lefty starters. So there's something. If you're looking to back Toronto in some way, you could say, hey, this lineup was hitting lefties about a month ago. They just haven't seen many. That's not a bad angle. I could see that. Personally, I don't trust the Blue Jays lineup at all, but I can see some logic in that angle. But then we get to Carlos Rodon's pitch mix. He uses a combination of the 4-seam fastball and the slider. The Blue Jays against lefties with that kind of pitch mix combination, dead last. 30th in WOBA, 30th in isolated power, 30th in run value. So even though Carlos Rodon has looked terrible in his last 2 starts, on paper, this looks like a great spot for him to bounce back. He's been great on the road all year. So I think it's a pretty solid spot to back Rodon. Now, we do have to take note that Rodon has already pitched against Toronto this year. Was back on April 16th, and the Blue Jays definitely got to him. 9 base runners, 3 earned runs in just 4 innings. But that was back in April where, as I mentioned, the Blue Jays were hitting lefties back then. That is not the case anymore. As far as the bullpen matchup in this one, I can't even believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but the Blue Jays might have the bullpen edge in this one. The Yankees bullpen has been straight up bad for a while now, and actually the Blue Jays bullpen, which has been terrible for most of the season, it's actually showing some signs of life. So Toronto's bullpen, based on the way they've played, the way they've been pitching the last 2 or 3 weeks, Toronto really might have the bullpen edge, which is just crazy to even say. Toronto's also going to be the more rested team in this one. I mean, they only played, 1 inning before that game got suspended and postponed. I mean, I really don't like this game betting-wise. Maybe an under. You can back Rodon, fade the Toronto bats, but also fade a cooling Yankees lineup. So maybe an under 8.5, but I think there's a good chance I pass on this one. Next up, we got Cincinnati on the road in St. Louis. Cards are short home favorites here, minus 135. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Andrew Abbott on the mound for the Reds. Miles Michaelis pitching for the Cards. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got to lean on the Cards through the first 5 innings, 3.16 to 2.45. Final score, 5.1 to 4.15 Cards. All right, before we get into this matchup, let's take a look at some ROI numbers. Pretty close on the season. Reds are minus 7.3%. Cards are minus 3.5%. But in the last 10 games, St. Louis has been paying out. The Reds definitely haven't. So St. Louis has been more profitable as of late. The Cards have also been cashing at home as of late. The last 10 games, plus 36.6%, plus 92.7% in the last 5 games. So Cards tickets have been cashing recently. So let's go ahead and start looking at this matchup. We'll start with the Reds bats. In the last 30 days, they're a top half lineup. 13th in WRC+, 12th in OPS, 12th in WOBA. Last 14 days, last 7 days don't look as good. They also haven't really been hitting right-handed pitching. Pretty average in the last 30 days, but look at the last 14 days, last 7 days. Not looking great there for the Reds. Now, the good news is they're back on the road because for whatever reason this season, the Reds just can't score runs at home in Great American Ballpark, which is just so different than what we're used to seeing from the Reds. This year, they've been more productive on the road. You can see in the last 30 days, they're actually a borderline top 5 lineup on the road, 6th, 5th, and 5th. The last 3 righty starters to pitch against the Reds, 4.96 ERA, 141 whip, 4.62 expected FIP. So, okay, Reds have gotten to some righty starters recently, and if you take a look at who they are, Mitch Keller, 9 base runners in less than 6 innings of work. That's solid. They got to Nick Pivetta, got to Cutter Crawford a little bit, not really. But considering the Reds are a lineup that's been struggling against righties, it's nice to see him causing some problems for some righty starters. That's 3 in a row where they were able to be active. They're up against Miles Michaelis in this one. Michaelis against the Reds has struggled. Since 2021, he's pitched against the Reds 10 times. 5.66 ERA, 126 whip isn't terrible, but 5.66 ERA obviously isn't great. But this season, Michaelis is on something else. Last 5 starts, 2.87 ERA, 0.80 whip. Last 3 starts, 2.33 and 0.72. Now, the expected FIP numbers indicate he's had some good luck, but still, let's not take credit away from Michaelis. He's been pitching great. If you look at his numbers at home, same thing. Even 3 ERA, 0.79 whip in his last 4 home starts. Last 2 home starts look great as well. Again, though, the expected FIP indicating he's had some good luck. And if we pull up his game logs here, you can see he did struggle in his last start. At home against the Giants, 8 base runners, 4 earned runs, and 6 innings of work. But before that, I mean, this is just quality start after quality start. Cubs, Pirates, on the road in Houston, that's a great start. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs on the road at Houston. Went on the road to Philly and pitched really well. So let's give some credit to Michaelis. He's really pitched great, despite the expected FIP numbers indicate that there's some regression coming. Now, I do want to point out that the Reds have good numbers against his pitch mix. On the last 30 days, the Reds are in the top half of baseball against his 3 main pitches: the slider, the 4-seam fastball, and the sinker. So definitely not what you want to see if you're backing Michaelis here. As a whole, there's not a ton of evidence indicating the Reds are going to hit him, but I do think they're going to get a couple runs on him. The Reds have hit better on the road. They get out of Great American Ballpark where they can't score runs, finally get on the road. I think they score a few runs on Michaelis here. On the other side, we got the Cards bats, and St. Louis has been hitting. In the last 30 days, pretty average, but skip up to the last 14 days, the last 7 days, St. Louis starting to come to life. At home, last 30 days, 10th, 12th, and 11th. Last 14 days, top 10 lineup at home. But Andrew Abbott pitches with his left hand. And when we get to the Cardinals numbers against lefties, this is where we could start to find some value on Cincinnati. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5 lineup against left-handed pitching. Same goes for the last 14 days. The last 3 lefty starters to pitch against the Cardinals, 1.23 ERA and an 0.75 whip. So they really haven't touched lefty starters recently. And look at the last 2. Braxton Garrett, 6 innings pitched, just 5 hits, 1 earned run. Before that, Imanaga, 7 innings pitched, just 1 earned run, 4 hits. So back-to-back lefty starters blanked. this Cardinals lineup. And this Cardinals lineup's been struggling against lefties all season. A couple years ago, this is one of the best lineups in baseball against lefties, but their two main lefty killers, Arenado and Goldschmidt, are both having terrible seasons. So this Cardinals lineup just hasn't been the same against lefties all year. Now, the good news for the Cardinals is Andrew Abbott's really struggled against this team, but again, a lot of that might be when Goldschmidt and Arenado were hitting. That's not the case this year. Arenado's not even healthy right now. His career against the Cardinals, 6.89 ERA and a 1.53 whip. As far as Abbott's numbers this year, they look pretty solid. 3.40 ERA and a 1.18 whip. Last 5 starts, 4.88, 1.37. Last 2 starts, 4.22, 1.12. So pretty average numbers from Abbott here. As far as his numbers on the road, he's been okay. His last 5 road starts, 4.13 ERA, 1.20 whip. Nothing really to take away from that. Pretty average. Here are his game logs. He's coming off a solid start against the Red Sox. 5 2/3 innings pitched, just 2 earned runs. Before that, he really struggled on the road in Milwaukee. And before that, he struggled with the Cubs. I know you can see he only allowed 1 earned run in that game, but 9 base runners against the Cubs. He struggled in Coors Field, got rocked by this same Cardinals team back on May 28th. So he's coming off a good start against the Red Sox, but the 4 before that were pretty shaky for Andrew Abbott. As a whole, though, even with those shaky-looking game logs, I can't trust this Cardinals lineup against a left-handed pitcher. So I think Abbott's going to pitch well. I like the edge for the Reds in the first 5. When we get to the bullpens, I'd give the slight edge to the Reds. I mean, the Cardinals bullpen has been good, though. In the last 30 days, they're 6th in ERA, 7th in WOBA. The Reds are 7th and 10th. But look at the expected FIP numbers, indicating the Cardinals have had some really good luck in the bullpen. As far as offenses against bullpens, the Cardinals have done nothing. They're one of the worst lineups in baseball in the late innings. Bottom 3, bottom 4 in the last 14 days. The Reds only slightly better than that, but still, slight edge towards the Reds in the late innings. And then we look at the bullpen usage for the Cardinals. Keep in mind, the Cardinals just played a doubleheader yesterday. They used every single arm they have. I mean, Helsley, 3 of the last 4 days. Kittredge through. Romero. Gallegos. Every single person in the bullpen for the Cardinals pitched. Liberator, who's been an innings eater for them out of the bullpen, he started one of the games and threw 85 pitches. So this Cardinals bullpen is definitely going to be in a bit of a situation here. Now, a lot of these guys will be available. They were rested heading into yesterday, but here's the way I look at it. I'm betting the Reds, by the way. I'm taking the Reds money line. I already bet this. If we lose this game, the Cardinals are going to have to use their bullpen arms, and we should be able to get it back on the Reds tomorrow. The way I'm looking at it, we're getting the Reds at plus money, and the Cardinals don't have the bullpen to win 2 games. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I think the Reds could steal this one, but if not, I'm going right back to the Reds tomorrow in all likelihood. So I'm on the Reds. I think it's the right side. Got it at plus 115, I think. Cincinnati money line. Next up, we got Cleveland on the road in Kansas City. Royals are short home dogs here, minus 105. Total sitting at 8.5. Ben Lively gets the start for Cleveland. Michael Wacha pitching for the Royals. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a slight lean on Cleveland after 5 innings, 3.08 to 2.61. Pretty solid lean on Cleveland. Final score as well, 5.66 to 3.81. So actually, real big lean on Cleveland. So before we take a look at this matchup, let's pull up some ROI numbers. Cleveland, extremely profitable this year, plus 21.02% ROI on the season. The Royals were right up there with Cleveland as one of the most profitable teams in baseball. They're all the way down to plus 5.6%. So all that money the Royals brought in, they've been giving it all back. They still have a plus 18.8% ROI at home. So the Royals at home, you still have to give them some respect, but they haven't been hitting at home either, and we'll get into it. Plus, Cleveland's been extremely profitable on the road. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with Michael Wacha. Having a solid season. In his last 6 starts, 2.55 ERA, 0.96 whip. The thing with Michael Wacha is it's only his 2nd start back. You could see he returned on June 22nd. He missed almost a full month. He was pretty good on the road in Texas. 5 innings pitched, just 1 earned run. And you can see on the game logs, he was pitching really well before he got hurt as well. Definitely having a solid season. He's been solid at home. His last 2 home starts, 2.92 ERA, a 1.05 whip. Again, we're talking about over a month ago, though. He missed almost a full month. But here's where I'm worried for Michael Wacha. He's got some shaky splits against lefty bats. 335 WOBA against lefties, 133 whip. Now, those aren't completely extreme, but a little shaky to see he's got some rough numbers against lefty bats. The reason for that is he's pitching against Cleveland. They're projected to have 8 lefties in the lineup. Cleveland's one of the most lefty-heavy lineups in baseball, so not what you want to see. A righty that struggles a little bit with lefty bats pitching against the Guardians. And also, Michael Wacha's thrown a lot of innings against bad lineups this year. 40 1/3 innings pitched against bottom 10 lineups versus righties. Only 16 1/3 against top 10 lineups versus righties. Cleveland's like top 3. And look at his numbers in those 16 1/3 innings pitched against top 10 lineups. 5.51 ERA and a 1.35 whip. So when he's seen good lineups, it's been rare, he struggled. So definitely not a great looking spot for Michael Wacha. And now we can take a look at Cleveland's offensive numbers. And as we know, they're all green. Last 30 days is a top 5 lineup. As far as on the road, top 10 on the season, top 5 in the last 30 days. As far as against right-handed pitching, top 3 in the last 30 days. I mean, Cleveland's offense has been as good as it gets in Major League Baseball. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Guardians, 8.05 ERA and a 163 whip. And here are the game logs. When's the last time a righty starter pitched a good game against Cleveland? I mean, they've gotten to every single righty starter on this list here. So right-handed starters, it's been a nightmare for righty starters trying to pitch this Cleveland team, lineup full of lefties. Now, we can point at the start last year, June 14th, 2023. Michael Wacha pitched a great game against Cleveland, 6 2/3 shutout innings, just 4 hits. But last year's Cleveland Guardians lineup was much different. They struggled against right-handed pitching last year. That's not the case this year. They're one of the best lineups in baseball against righties. So, yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland's going to score runs on Michael Wacha. They're going to score runs on any righty starter they see right now. So, until they cool off, I don't see any reason to doubt them. On the other side, we got Ben Lively, and last 2 starts, 5.59 ERA, 145 whip. So Ben Lively going through a little bit of a rough patch. Both of them against Toronto. Now, when you actually take a look at the game logs, though, you can see it's really just one bad start on the road in Toronto, and it's skewing the numbers from the last 2 starts. His last start, home against Toronto, 5 2/3 innings pitched, 5 base runners, 2 earned runs. That's a great start. So it's really just one bad start here on the road in Toronto. But as we're looking at these game logs here, where are the other bad starts? I mean, 4 good starts in a row before that road start in Toronto, and the last time he got hit up was back on May 14th in Texas. So Ben Lively, 5 of his last 6 starts were solid. He's been pitching pretty well. He's been solid on the road this year. His last 6 road starts, 3.77 ERA, 139 whip, solid-looking numbers, and he's pitching against Kansas City, who very well might be the worst lineup in baseball right now. I keep saying it on the live show. I mean it. In the last 14 days, they are dead last across the board. 30th in WRC+, 30th in OPS, 30th in WOBA. Remember when the Royals bats were super dangerous at home? Yeah, that's in the past. In the last 30 days, this is bottom half lineup at home and dropping fast. Over the last 14 days, we're talking bottom 10 lineup at home against right-handed pitching, worst in baseball. Last 14 days, 30th, 30th, and 30th. This Royals lineup has gone completely cold. Check this out. The last 10 righty starters to pitch against the Royals, 2.14 ERA and an 0.95 whip. So they are not touching righty starters. And if you pull up the game logs, you can see they got to Roddery Munoz. Other than that, every single righty starter on this list pitched a great game against Kansas City. And look at the names. These aren't Cy Young candidates. Yanni Chirinos, Jose Arena. Actually, I think that was a bullpen stint for Arena. John Gray, 6 shutout, 2 hit. Eovaldi, Mitch Spence, Luis Medina. I mean, Eovaldi's the man, but there's not many great names on this list, and they're all blanking this Royals lineup. And this matchup just keeps looking worse and worse for the Royals. Check this out. They're one of the worst lineups in baseball against good righty starters, against righties with an ERA below 3.50, 27th and 29th. Ben Lively is a 3.03 ERA. They're also one of the worst lineups in baseball against his pitch mix. His 2 main pitches, the sinker and the 4-seam fastball. In the last 30 days, the Royals are 28th and 29th against those 2 pitches. Oh yeah, and to add even more to it, Ben Lively's got great numbers against lefty bats. 263 WOBA, 097 whip. Royals are projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup. So, I mean, I've been blindly fading this Royals lineup for several days now. I took the under twice, and I took the Marlins money line, so I went 3-0 in that series against the Marlins. I think Ben Lively should pitch great here. As far as the matchup in the late innings, no question, it's all Cleveland. I mean, we're talking about the best bullpen in baseball against one of the worst. I mean, it's that simple. Cleveland's bullpen on the road, best in baseball. Kansas City's bullpen at home, one of the worst in baseball. What about offenses against opposing bullpens? Shocker. Edge goes to Cleveland. I mean, not that Cleveland's been electric. They're pretty average, but in the last 14 days, the Royals have one of the worst lineups in baseball in the late innings. So huge edge to the Guardians in the late innings as well. As far as betting this game, I mean, I'm sure you figured it out. I'm on Cleveland. I will say I didn't absolutely hammer it. I don't love the spot for them coming out of the series with Baltimore, immediately flying into Kansas City. I don't love that. Also, their bullpen is pretty taxed, but they did get all their guys 1 day off. So they got a day's rest, but the Cleveland bullpen is definitely still overused. But Kansas City just used MacArthur 2 of the last 3 days as well. So I feel pretty comfortable on Cleveland. It's one of my smaller bets so far, but I'm on the Guardians money line. There are a couple more games on the board that I didn't get to, but like I said, we'll go through every single one on the live show tomorrow, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want my top bets or top bets from everyone on the staff here, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus. It comes with top bets, access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. $100 and a trophy go to the winner every single week. It's been fun. So head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus if you're interested in any of that. Let's have ourselves a nice Thursday here. Obviously a lighter slate like it always is for the MLB. But still, bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.